2026, not a new year, not a fresh start, just another number, unless you decide it means something, because time doesn't change people. Decisions do. And if nothing changes in your mornings, nothing changes in your life. Let me tell you something most people don't want to hear. You don't need another year. You need a new you. 2026 is not coming to save you. No calendar has ever changed a life. Only decisions do. If you want a stronger mind, a sharper focus, and unshakable confidence, it starts before the world wakes up. Because how you begin your morning determines how you finish your life. Rebuilding starts with identity. Stop asking, what should I do? Start asking, who must I become? Because your habits don't follow your goals. They follow your self-image. When you see yourself as disciplined, you act disciplined. When you see yourself as powerful, you move with purpose. So let me give you 12 morning habits that don't just change behavior. They rebuild mental strength. Habit. First, wake up with intention. Dawn at wake up, reacting to alarms and notifications. Wake up deciding. The first voice you hear in the morning should be yours, not the world's. Habit. Second, make your bed immediately. This isn't about cleanliness. It's about winning early. Discipline starts with small obedience, and small wins build unstoppable momentum. Habit. Third, no phone for the first hour. If you check your phone first, you've already lost control. Strong minds consume information on purpose, not by accident. Habit. Fourth, silence before stimulation. Sit in silence, pray, meditate, breathe. Clarity is born in quiet places. Habit. Fifth, read something that stretches your thinking. 10 pages can change a decade. Input determines output. Feed your mind before you feed your body. Habit. Sixth, speak your identity out loud. Say it until you believe it. Say it until your actions obey it. Words don't just describe reality, they create it. Habit. Seventh, move your body. Motion creates emotion. A strong body trains a strong mind. Habit. Eighth, cold exposure or discomfort. Comfort weakens, discomfort sharpens. Mental strength grows where resistance lives. Habit. Ninth, write your top 3 priorities. Busy people react, focused people dominate. Clarity beats hustle every time. Habit. 10th, visualize the win, see it before you touch it. Your mind must arrive before your body can follow. Habit. 11th, gratitude with perspective. Gratitude doesn't make you passive, it makes you powerful. Thankfulness reminds you how far you've already come. Habit. 12th, leave the house like a person on assignment. You're not wandering through life. You're building something. Act like it. Closing. Rebuilding yourself in 2026 is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming intentional. Strong minds aren't born, they're built. One morning at a time. So don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for January. Don't wait for permission. Decide today who you are becoming. Because when the morning is mastered, the future has no choice but to follow. Before habits ever change, identity must change. Because no habit can permanently outgrow the person practicing it. Most people are trying to force new behaviors onto an old self-image. They wake up saying, I need better habits. But deep down, they still see themselves as inconsistent, undisciplined, or unlucky. And the mind will always work to stay aligned with who you believe you are. That's why habits fail. Not because you're weak, but because your identity keeps pulling you back to familiar ground. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your self-concept. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you will try and quit. If you see yourself as someone who is disciplined, discipline becomes natural. If you see yourself as someone who finishes what they start, quitting stops being an option. Identity is the operating system. Habits are just applications. Change the apps without updating the system and everything crashes. This is why willpower doesn't work long term. Willpower is effort. Identity is alignment. When your actions match who you believe you are, they stop feeling forced. You don't need motivation to do what feels normal to you. Think about it. You don't need motivation to breathe. You don't need discipline to check your name when it's called. Why? Because those actions are tied to identity. The strongest habits in your life are the ones connected to who you believe you are, not what you're trying to improve. That's why real transformation begins with language. Not what you say once, but what you say repeatedly. When you say, I'm trying to wake up early, your brain hears uncertainty. When you say, I am someone who starts the day with intention, your behavior adjusts to protect that identity. The mind hates inconsistency between belief and action, so it will either change your behavior to match your identity or quietly sabotage your habits to protect your old story. This is also why environment alone doesn't fix people. You can change your routine, your location, even your circle, but if your identity stays the same, you will recreate old patterns in a new place. The prison is not the situation. The prison is the self-image. Rebuilding yourself means deciding consciously and deliberately who you are now before the evidence shows up. Identity always comes before results. You don't wait to be disciplined to call yourself disciplined. You decide it first, then you prove it through action. This is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. If you say, this is who I am now, you can no longer hide behind circumstances, moods, or timing. Identity demands responsibility, and responsibility is the price of power. Once identity shifts, habits stop being a struggle, waking up early stops being a fight, focus stops being a battle. Consistency stops being heroic. It becomes expected because you are no longer building habits to change your life. You're expressing habits that reflect who you have decided to be. That is why identity comes first, always. Change who you believe you are in the quiet moments, and your mornings will fall in line. Change your mornings, and your future has no choice but to follow. Your life does not fall apart randomly, and it does not come together by accident. It follows a pattern, and that pattern is set every single morning. The way you begin the day quietly determines how you think, how you decide, and how you respond when pressure shows up. That is why morning control is life control. Most people wake up already behind their phone, behind someone else's agenda, behind noise, messages, and demands they didn't choose. And once the morning is lost, the day becomes reactive. When you react all day, you don't lead your life, you chase it. The morning is the only part of the day that hasn't been contaminated yet. No opinions, no expectations, no emergencies, just you and your choices. Whoever controls that window controls the direction of everything that follows. If the first thing you do is consume, your mind stays in defense mode. If the first thing you do is rush, your nervous system learns anxiety as a baseline. If the first thing you do is scroll, compare, or complain, you train your brain to stay distracted and dissatisfied. You don't notice the damage immediately, but over time it rewires your focus, your confidence, and your emotional stability. Strong lives are built by people who guard their mornings like assets. They understand that clarity is fragile and must be protected early. They don't wait for motivation to show up. They create structure so motivation becomes unnecessary. When you win the morning, you win twice. First, you build momentum. There is power in starting the day knowing you kept a promise to yourself. That single act strengthens self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of confidence. People who don't trust themselves overcompensate with excuses. People who do trust themselves move quietly and consistently. Second, you program your mind. The brain is most suggestible in the early hours. What you think, say, and focus on in the morning sets the emotional tone for the rest of the day. That's why chaos early leads to chaos later, and discipline early creates calm under pressure. This is not about waking up early for status or discipline for ego. It's about ownership. If you don't decide how your day starts, someone else will. Emails will decide. Social media will decide. Other people's problems will decide. And before you know it, you've lived another day without intention. Life control is not control over people or circumstances. It is control over response, direction, and attention. And attention is trained first thing in the morning. What you give attention to at the start expands throughout the day. Focus on progress, you notice opportunities. Focus on stress, you attract friction. Most people try to fix their lives at night when they're exhausted, but change requires clarity, and clarity lives in the morning. That is where discipline is easiest and distractions are weakest. That is where the future is negotiated. When mornings are intentional, days become productive. When days are productive, weeks build momentum. When weeks are aligned, years transform. No overnight success, just daily ownership. Control the morning and you don't need to chase the day. You walk into it prepared, steady, and focused. That is how life is mastered, not in big moments, but in the quiet discipline of how you begin. Mental strength is not something you discover one day like a hidden talent. It is not reserved for a special group of people who were born tougher, calmer, or more confident. Mental strength is built the same way muscles are built, through repeated resistance, deliberate practice, and consistent pressure over time. It is trained, not found. Most people believe confidence comes first and action follows. In reality, action comes first, and confidence is the reward. You don't wake up feeling strong. You wake up and do what weak moments try to talk you out of. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you lay another brick in the foundation of mental toughness. Comfort is the greatest enemy of strength. The mind adapts to whatever you repeatedly expose it to. If you constantly avoid difficulty, your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. Small problems feel overwhelming. Minor setbacks feel personal. But when you deliberately step into challenge, the mind expands its capacity to handle pressure without panic. Mental strength is built in moments nobody applauds. When you wake up tired and still get up, when you stay focused even when no one is watching, when you finish what you started even though quitting would be easier. These moments don't look heroic, but they create a person who is unshakable when it counts. The mind learns through evidence. Every completed hard task sends a message. I can handle this. Over time, those messages stack. That is how belief is formed, not through affirmations alone, but through proof. Discipline creates evidence. Evidence creates confidence. Confidence creates calm under pressure. That's why waiting to feel ready is a trap. Readiness is the result of repetition, not the requirement. If you only act when you feel strong, you stay weak. Strength is borrowed from action until it becomes internal. Mental strength also requires friction. A life without resistance produces fragility. That's why voluntary discomfort is powerful. Cold mornings, focused silence, saying no when distraction is easier. These choices train emotional regulation. You learn that discomfort does not equal danger. And once the mind understands that, fear loses control. Strong minds are not loud. They are steady. They don't panic when plans change. They don't collapse under criticism. They don't overreact to setbacks. That stability comes from training the mind to pause, evaluate, and respond instead of react. Reaction is instinct. Response is strength. Training the mind also means controlling input. What you consume mentally shapes your inner dialogue. Chaos in equals chaos out. Strength requires clarity, and clarity requires selective focus. Mentally strong people don't entertain every thought. They choose which ones deserve attention. This training is daily. There is no finish line where mental strength is permanently secured. Miss enough days of discipline and weakness returns. Not because you failed, but because strength requires maintenance. Just like the body. The good news is this: every day gives you another chance to train. You don't need a perfect past. You need consistent effort now. Mental strength does not demand perfection. It demands persistence. You don't find mental strength by looking inward and hoping it's there. You build it outward through action, pressure, and repetition. And once trained, it becomes part of who you are. Calm in chaos, steady in uncertainty and discipline. When it matters most, motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes with mood, energy, weather, and circumstances. Some days it shows up loud, other days it disappears without warning. If your progress depends on motivation, your results will always be inconsistent. That is why focus beats motivation every time. Motivation is emotional. Focus is intentional. One reacts to how you feel, the other responds to what matters. People who wait to feel motivated live in cycles. Bursts of effort, followed by long pauses. People who develop focus move forward whether they feel like it or not. That consistency is what separates progress from frustration. Focus is a decision made in advance. It is choosing a direction and removing distractions before they have the chance to negotiate with you. When focus is clear, action becomes simpler. You are no longer asking, do I feel like doing this? You are asking, is this aligned with what I decided matters? The mind is constantly looking for escape. Distraction offers comfort, novelty, and relief from effort. Motivation often fuels distraction because it relies on excitement. Focus, on the other hand, thrives on clarity. When you know exactly what you are building, saying no becomes easier than saying yes. Motivated people talk about what they want to do. Focused people are too busy executing to explain themselves. Focus compresses time. 1 hour of deep, uninterrupted work beats 10 hours of scattered effort. That is how focused individuals make progress that looks unrealistic to others. Focus also protects mental energy. Every decision costs something. When your priorities are unclear, you waste energy deciding repeatedly what to do next. Focus removes friction by narrowing options. Fewer choices, fewer distractions, more momentum. This is why disciplined routines outperform bursts of inspiration. Motivation creates sparks. Focus builds fire, and fire requires structure, boundaries, and protection. Without them, even the strongest spark dies out. Focus trains emotional regulation. When you stay locked on what matters, external noise loses its influence. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't derail you. You become anchored to purpose instead of reaction. That stability is power. Most people overestimate what motivation can do and underestimate what focus can build over time. Motivation might get you started, but focus is what carries you through boredom, resistance, and fatigue. Focus keeps showing up long after excitement fades. Focus also requires sacrifice. You cannot focus on everything. Progress demands elimination. Saying no to distractions is saying yes to your future. Every focus session is a vote for the person you are becoming. When focus is strong, momentum follows. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence reduces resistance. And suddenly, wow! T once required motivation feels natural. Not because it got easier, but because you got clearer. Motivation asks, how do I feel today? Focus asks, what must be done regardless? One creates excuses, the other creates results. In the long run, motivation inspires beginnings. Focus builds legacies, and legacies are not built by feeling good. They are built by showing up with clarity again and again until the work is done. Most people underestimate the power of small daily wins because they don't look impressive in the moment. They don't feel dramatic. They don't bring instant applause. But small wins are not meant to impress. They are meant to compound. And compounding is quiet, patient, and unstoppable. Big results are rarely the product of big actions done once. They are the outcome of small actions done consistently. The mind resists this truth because it wants transformation to be fast, visible, and emotionally rewarding. But progress doesn't work on emotion. It works on accumulation. Every small win sends a signal to your nervous system, I am capable, I am consistent, I can be trusted. That signal may feel insignificant today, but repeated daily, it reshapes your self-image. And once your self-image shifts, your standards rise. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop making excuses that once felt reasonable. Small daily wins build momentum, and momentum changes behavior. When you win early and often, action feels lighter. Resistance weakens. Discipline stops feeling like force and starts feeling like alignment. You no longer need heroic effort to stay consistent. Consistency becomes expected. The danger is not failing big. The danger is failing small repeatedly. Skipping one workout doesn't destroy progress, but skipping small commitments consistently trains your mind to break promises to yourself. That erosion of self-trust is what keeps people. Small losses compound too, in doubt, hesitation, and regret. Small wins protect mental energy. Instead of overwhelming yourself with massive goals, you narrow your focus to what can be completed today. Completion builds confidence. Confidence builds speed. Speed builds belief. And belief accelerates everything. This is why systems outperform goals. Goals are distant. Wins are immediate. When you design your day to guarantee small victories, a focused work session, a disciplined morning, a completed task, you create proof of progress. Proof beats hope every time. Compounding works whether you respect it or not. 5 minutes of focused reading every day becomes a library over time. One disciplined morning becomes a disciplined week. A disciplined week becomes a disciplined life. The change feels invisible until one day it's undeniable. Small wins also build resilience. When setbacks happen, and they will, A history of consistency keeps you grounded. You don't collapse under failure because you know how to rebuild. You've done it before, one small action at a time. The most powerful part of small daily wins is that they are always available. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need motivation. You don't need permission. You just need the willingness to do the next right thing. People who change their lives are not the ones who do extraordinary things occasionally. They are the ones who do ordinary things extraordinarily well, every day, without drama. Small daily wins are humble, but they are dangerous. They sneak up on doubt. They outlast motivation. They quietly turn effort into identity. And one day, people will call your results overnight success, not realizing they are standing on top of thousands of small victories that never stop compounding. 2026 is not a turning point by default. It does not arrive with new discipline, new courage, or a stronger mindset packaged inside it. It shows up the same way every year does, quietly, neutrally, without promises. The mistake most people make is believing time will do the work they are unwilling to do themselves. But time doesn't transform lives. Decisions do. A date can change, but a life only changes when someone decides to stop living on autopilot. You can step into 2026 with new goals written down and still carry the same habits, the same excuses, and the same patterns that held you back before. When that happens, the year becomes nothing more than a continuation of the past with a different label. A decision is different. A decision draws a line. It says, this version of me ends here. It removes negotiation. It replaces hoping with ownership. Once a real decision is made, behavior begins to shift because the mind is no longer asking for permission to quit. It is operating from commitment instead of emotion. Most people confuse intention with decision. Intention says, I want to. Decision says, I will. Intention waits for the right moment. Decision creates it. That's why so many people feel inspired at the start of a year, but unchanged by the end of it. Inspiration fades. Decisions endure. 2026 will not reward effort that starts late or discipline that depends on mood. It will reward clarity. Clarity about who you are becoming, what you will tolerate, and what you will no longer accept from yourself. That clarity doesn't arrive on January 1st. It arrives the moment you take responsibility for your direction. A decision reshapes identity. When you decide, you stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying and start acting like someone who is commit. That shift is subtle, but powerful. You stop bargaining with distractions. You stop waiting to feel ready. You move even when it's uncomfortable because the alternative, staying the same, is no longer acceptable. The hardest part about deciding is that it removes excuses. You can no longer blame timing, circumstances, or other people. A decision places the outcome back in your hands. That responsibility can feel heavy, but it is also freeing. Because once you accept responsibility, you gain control. 2026 doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be decisive. Progress does not come from massive overnight changes, but from a firm internal commitment that guides small daily actions. When the decision is real, habits follow. Focus sharpens. Discipline becomes simpler because you are no longer debating your direction. Years don't shape people. People shape years. And the people who look back at 2026 as a breakthrough year won't say it was because of luck, timing, or motivation. They will say it was the year they stopped waiting and started deciding. 2026 is not a date you step into. It is a decision you make and then live out one day at a time until your actions prove it was real. 2026 is not asking you to be louder, faster, or perfect. It is asking you to be intentional. Everything you've heard comes down to one truth. Your life changes when you change. Not in big dramatic moments, but in quiet, disciplined decisions made every morning. Identity comes first. Mornings shape direction. Mental strength is trained. Focus outlasts motivation. Small wins compound. And years change only when decisions do. You don't need to do everything at once. You just need to stop doing nothing on purpose. The version of you that survives another year is optional. The version of you that grows is a choice. So as 2026 approaches, don't ask what the year will bring. Ask what you will bring into it. Decide who you are. Decide how you start your days. Decide what you tolerate. and what you leave behind. Because when the decision is real, the habits follow. And when the habits follow, the results have no choice but to show up. 2026 will not define you. You will define 2026. And it all starts now.